It's time for Twit This Week in Tech. We've got a great panel for you. Ben Thompson from Stratechery, from Fortune.com, Philip Elmer-DeWitt, from Mac Observer, Dave Hamilton. We've tried Apple Pay. Does it work? And why won't CVS use it? We'll explain all. And has Google peaked? Ben says it has. We'll find out why next on Twit.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for This Week in Tech is provided by CacheFly at CacheFly.com. This is Twit This Week in Tech, episode 481, recorded October 26th, 2014. Good touch, bad touch. This Week in Tech is brought to you by Citrix Go-To Meeting, the powerfully simple way to meet with coworkers and clients from the convenience of your computer, smartphone, or tablet. Share the same screen and see each other face-to-face with HD video conferencing. For a 30-day free trial, visit gotomeeting.com today. And by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform that makes it fast and easy to create your own professional website or online portfolio. For a free 2-week trial and 10% off, go to squarespace.com. Use the offer code TWIT. And by Shutterstock.com. With over 42 million high-quality stock photos, illustrations, vectors, and video clips, Shutterstock helps you take your creative projects to the next level. For 20% off image subscription packages on your new account, go to Shutterstock.com and use the offer code TWIT1014. And by Stamps.com. Start using your time more effectively with Stamps.com. Use Stamps.com to buy and print real U.S. postage the instant you need it right from your desk. For our special offer, go to Stamps.com now, click on the microphone, and enter TWIT. That's Stamps.com, offer code TWIT. It's time for Twit This Week in Tech, the show that covers the week's tech news. Been a very interesting week, and fortunately, we have a very accomplished panel to help us dissect it. Starting, let's see, we'll start all the way with our senior member, Philip Elmer-DeWitt. For many years, been at Fortune.com writing about technology, but he is actually one of the senior members of the tech journalist clan. Started Time.com, started Time's technology coverage, and worked at Bolt, Beranek, and Newman in the early days of the internet. Philip, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. And you probably can tell just looking at him that he's in Massachusetts.
I've got my Massachusetts shirt on.
And the room is heated by a fireplace, one in every room.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
It's on right now.
I could tell. I know. I grew up in Rhode Island. I know what these things are like. Also from Taiwan, joining us, the man in charge of Stratechery, Ben Thompson. Always great to have Ben on. Good to have you. What time in the morning is it?
6 in the morning.
Thank you for getting up early. I can't thank you enough.
No worries. Happy to be here.
We love having you. And Stratechery is a very insightful blog about the tech industry. It's kind of a must-read. And finally, from the Mac Observer, great to have Dave Hamilton back, founder of the Mac Observer. He does the Mac Geek Gab podcast.
Say that 10 times fast.
Mac Geek Gab. Yeah. Did you think about that when you named it?
I did not. No, but now I can say Mac Geek Gab in my sleep. So, you know.
Good.
Just one of those things. Yeah.
Yeah. Twit. It's easy. Twit.
I know. Yeah. See, you thought about
I thought about it.
It's not your first rodeo.
Not my first rodeo. No tongue twisters here. So since we've got somebody from China, this is actually, we're going to start with kind of not one of the top stories, but still an interesting story. Mark Zuckerberg in Beijing meeting or talking to, who's he talking to? Chinese people, I guess.
Yeah, Tsinghua University. And you just waded into it by calling it someone in China when I'm in Taiwan.
God, no, he's not in China. He's in Taiwan.
No. Well, it's not, see, now you're in the middle of it because now you just...
now I'm going the other way.
The other half of your audience.
I've swung the other way. I forgot. Yeah, you're in Taiwan, which the Taiwanese consider China.
No? It's complicated.
Yeah.
I believe the official U.S. status anyway is that it's undetermined. So
great.
Easiest just leave it there.
He's in Taiwan. That's what we really need to say. So in the middle of this talk, he starts speaking Chinese.
We did the whole thing in Chinese. So
30 minutes.
Yeah, blew everyone's mind. Like immediately, you know, asked him to introduce himself. He started speaking Chinese. They loved it. Thought he'd switch to English, and he never did. He did the whole thing in Chinese.
The thing that's amazing about the Chinese people in general, my experience, I studied Chinese in college, is you can have the most execrable Chinese, the worst accent in the world, and they, to a man, will say, "Oh, you sound great. You sound really good," right?
Well, no, absolutely. I mean, it was actually, I thought it was very, very impressive.
Let's hear Mark speak Chinese.
我的中文很糟糕，但是我的天，
没错。
没错。I mean, he sounds like an American speaking Chinese.
Well, he said my Chinese is very terrible, and I said that's not wrong.
Yeah.
Basically, he has a very impressive vocabulary. But his pronunciation is very poor.
He's not getting the tones, it sounds like.
Right. He has no tones at all.
No tones.
So they're like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like those are three different words, and he just kind of all says it the
just
same.
says, whoa.
Well, basically, it makes sense. It sounds like someone who studies quite a bit on their own.
Right.
But very rarely like has a tutor or speaks to someone who actually, regularly.
Can I just say it's damn impressive?
No, it's amazing.
Here's a man who kills and dresses his own meat. Runs one of the biggest companies in the world, is easily the richest person under 30. Well, actually, I guess he's 30 now. But for many years, the richest person under 30. And, oh, by the way, he's been studying Chinese in his sleep.
No, yeah, it's incredibly.
Spare time.
It's incredibly impressive. And I thought people, giving him, especially, the whole, like, white people want to show they're good at Chinese, giving him crap about it. I thought it was. Yeah, I don't think it was very fair. And I think it was, you're right. I found, just speaking a little bit of Chinese, is everyone's, yes, it's great. But they're also, I think, there's a lot of appreciation for it. I think particularly in China. Again, this is...
They appreciate the effort.
Well, it's not just that, but I think with the risk of wading into, these sort of things, I think there's tends to be a sense in China, that like they're... we used to be kind of the center of the world economy, which is true, and we've been held back in the last few years, and now like we're regaining a rightful place. And to have someone of Zuckerberg's stature to have clearly spent the time to come in and speak Chinese, I'm certain generated a tremendous amount of goodwill.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's going to get Facebook unblocked in China, but I could not be more impressed and think that there was nothing but upside as far as him in China goes. And I think all the people saying he spoke like a 7-year-old sound like whiny 7-year-olds. So,
that ain't bad. I'd be glad to speak as a Chinese 7-year-old. His wife, Priscilla, is Chinese, but is she of Chinese ancestry?
She's Cantonese, actually. She's from Hong Kong, which I was surprised he mentioned that she spoke Chinese. I looked it up. I think she mostly speaks Cantonese, which is...
very different language. It's like French to English. It's not...
Yeah, it's like in the same general family, but it's definitely a different language. But like I said, his Chinese sounded like he doesn't really speak it. He more, practices a lot. But like I said, it's incredibly impressive. I think, I don't think there's, I have nothing but great things to say about it.
He's got book learning.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what it sounded like.
Yeah.
What impressed me was that he was cracking wise and getting big laughs. I mean, this was a guy who was very uncomfortable on stage in his native language, and that he was able to, he was like a comedian. He was like doing stand-up.
He's much more comfortable speaking in Chinese than he is in English. That's a very good point.
He's come a long way in general, but yeah, I think the other thing, just in general, that I think is a great example. I mean, I think there's lots of people in any language, but I think it tends to be a challenge in this culture. That's if you're not perfect, if you're not doing it exactly right, you're very fearful to kind of step out and do it. And he was not perfect, but he did it, and I thought it was awesome. So,
So let's listen a little more. I just want to hear a little more of Mark Zuckerberg. The audience loves it. And if you're making a joke in another language, that's pretty good grasp of the language.
我觉得清华的学生很好，Facebook
很好. He sounds like the Apple iPhone stream. No, I'm sorry. That was just a bad joke. Speaking of China, Tim Cook went to China. I don't think he was speaking Chinese to the vice premier. We kind of speculated that the CEO of Apple went to China because China or somebody somehow in China, the Great Firewall of China was blocking, actually intercepting traffic to iCloud.com along with Live.com, capturing the login and then passing Chinese nationals along to iCloud, presumably to gather credentials to the iCloud server. This was discovered by GreatFire.org, one of the watchdog groups that monitors the Great Firewall of China. The Chinese government immediately denied it, said, it wasn't us, although it's hard to imagine who might have been able to do that. And very next day, Tim Cook shows up in China. And even the Xinhua news agency even said to talk about telecommunications. I doubt he was speaking in Chinese at the time.
Also, no, specifically to talk about security issues.
Yeah.
So, you know, the speculation that he flew there just because of this turns out not to be true. He's on the same board of the same university that Zuckerberg was on, and he spoke to them as well. So this was a pre-planned trip. He hit a lot of the Apple things. You know, he went to Foxconn, made an appearance there.
In Shenzhen, yeah,
making iPhones as fast as they can.
Yeah.
He spoke about their renewed commitment to build 40 Apple stores in China, which would, I guess, triple the number of stores they have now. But you know, the security issue is an issue, and you know that he got an audience with the vice premier, and that they had what politicians usually call a frank and open discussion, which means they hated each other and yelled. Is significant, I think, and we'll see what comes of it.
It's interesting to see the picture of Tim Cook and Vice Premier Ma Kai together, because it's the same. It reminds me very much of the same picture of Richard Nixon with Zhou Enlai sitting in the big comfy chairs, stiffly acknowledging each other, tea between them. But you've got to know that this is here's the picture. You got to know this is a very important market for not only for Apple, but also if Facebook could get that market for Facebook. You may remember at the Apple event, Tim Cook spent a fairly long time standing in front of the Chinese flag, clearly a photo op, talking about the iPhone entering China. And, of course, this was the iPad event. And it is said that he was also very anxious to talk with the Chinese government about Apple Pay.
Apple Pay. And Apple Pay seems to be, and he said that was, in an interview he gave on the last day he was there, he said that was the #1 thing on his agenda. That's what he wants to get into China. And, you know, why it wasn't there from day one, we don't know. You know, but as soon as 8.1 came out, it worked in America. But the phones went on sale in China last week, and Apple Pay wasn't turned on. So it's
I'm actually not shocked. I mean, if CVS and Rite Aid won't use Apple Pay, I'm not surprised that they won't use it in China. I mean,
well, there's a few things going on here. So, I mean, first off, China has a different payment network. It's called Union Pay.
They already have a network. Is it a tap-to-pay style network? Or
No. I mean, like MasterCard and Visa are networks that tie banks to merchants. Like they're not actual like American Express is separate. American Express is an actual bank. Okay. But China has an equivalent to MasterCard and Visa called Union Pay. And there was actually a rumor before the event that Apple had signed an agreement with Union Pay. I don't know if that's the case or not.
But they would need to make a deal with a Chinese bank, just as they need to make deals with banks in the U.S.
They would, and I'm sure there's going to be significant challenges when it comes to government approval and regulation. Right. And it's interesting because I want to say I'm certain that this interception of passwords, stuff like that, was a coincidence. But if Tim Cook certainly did not fight at Apple because this happened. It's not outside the realm of possibility that the Chinese government did it right before he came to China to send a message.
To soften him.
Well, I mean, it's an incredibly opaque and complicated sort of environment. But as you noted, it's one that's really critical for Apple. The reality is Apple is the only Western tech company that has a future in China. If you're a service like Facebook or anyone else, you're going to be blocked. if you're a software provider like Microsoft was traditionally, all your stuff's going to be pirated. Apple's kind of business model where they sell hardware differentiated by their software makes them actually uniquely equipped to succeed in that economy, unlike pretty much any other Western provider. I mean, I guess the only ones that have been successful have been other hardware manufacturers like Samsung and stuff like that. But now they're, because they're not really differentiated on the software side, they're struggling right now. So Apple has a tremendous opportunity there. It's super important to them. But on the flip side, that actually means that Apple has a lot more risk in China. You saw it happen with the iPhone. To me, it's very hard to tell for sure what's happening. To me, it was a bit of muscle flexing by the Chinese government to kind of remind Apple who's in charge. Again, this is pure conjecture because we don't really know. No one really can know. But it's one of the most important relationships in the entire business world, to be quite frank. And it's going to be really fascinating to watch it and see what happens, how things change. And yeah, it's kind of absurd to speculate about, how these weird things might be connected. But hey, welcome to China watching.
Really fascinating. And I guess then it's no accident that sit down with Ma Kai looks so much like détente when Richard Nixon reached out to China for the first time. It is a business détente. No,
absolutely. I mean, it's and the reality is, I mean, Apple is one of a whole bunch of companies that have been impacted by the Edward Snowden revelations, where the U.S. has traditionally been very unfriendly to Chinese technological companies for reasons of suspected espionage. So Huawei, for example, was forced to give up on the U.S. market. They
right.
provide telecommunications equipment, and so the U.S. market is basically uncompetitive because you can only buy from Ericsson because Huawei isn't allowed to compete in the U.S. effectively because they're accused of providing, spying for the Chinese government. And so then you come along, and there's tons of examples of this. There's the thing about like a Chinese government wanting to buy a port a few years ago or buy like an oil refinery, and there's a big uproar in Congress. And then this comes along and says, oh, the U.S. is putting back doors in, is doing all these sorts of things. And the Chinese government, rather justifiably, is like, wait, what's going on here? You're not giving our companies a fair shake, and meanwhile, you're doing the same thing. And so a lot of U.S. companies have been pretty significantly impacted in China. Microsoft's having a lot of trouble in China right now.
Yeah, the Chinese government forbids the use of Windows 8.1 in
well, it's not
offices.
Just that. They're under like this amorphous antitrust investigation.
Yeah, they're being investigated. That's right. Yeah.
And same thing with Qualcomm. Qualcomm's facing like $1 billion fine in China. And maybe it's one of those things in China, like you can, because how stuff goes down is all, you're never quite sure. You can always be caught on something. And meanwhile, in China in general, there's this big crackdown on corruption. There's the new premier really solidifying power, or president, sorry, around himself. And so there's really a lot of uncertainty in general. And the other thing for Apple is they're very impacted now by the Chinese government. It's their third biggest market. It's well, if it's not their second already, it's going to be their first in a few years.
If they're going to, Apple, which is stagnating in the iPad business, for instance, if they're going to find growth, they're going to find it in developing nations, but more even than that in China.
Well, I mean, the reality is it's just a size thing.
Yeah,
and people
billions of customers. Yeah,
I remember when like the 5C came out, they were like, "Oh, that's a month's salary in China," and that was so misplaced because the reality is China is huge,
right.
Over 1 billion people. It has massive inequality. If you're a
1%er in China, you're one of 100 million. There's plenty of them.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
10 million to be exact. But
10 million, yeah.
But there's a lot of people that can afford Apple products. In Chinese culture in particular, it's very fine and accepted to demonstrate your wealth,
show off,
your things like that. And so there's absolutely something where you take out an iPhone, you put it on the table, like that means something. And there's no surprise the Apple Watch, the first editorial was in Chinese Vogue. I mean, you can't really understand Apple.
The cover of Vogue China had the model was wearing an Apple Watch. So it's no accident then that when Apple talked about this hijack attempt, they didn't use the word China at all. They did put out a page saying how you could use a browser that would detect certificate fraud and warn you. Apparently, the most used browser in China does not. Qihoo does not. but Chrome does, Firefox does, and of course Safari does. So Apple doesn't mention China. They just say, just in case, you probably should use one of these browsers.
Right. I mean, Apple's improved a lot their kind of public response in China.
They're not foolish. Yeah.
Well, there was a year ago, I think, there was a Chinese in Xinhua. There was a report about Apple warranty problems and reliability or something, and Apple was their typical Apple in PR, not really responding. When responding, kind of being like, "Yeah, give me a break." And that did not go over well. And Apple had to do quite a bit of damage control. And now you see when these sorts of things come up in China, they're very fast. They're much more, I mean, don't use subservient, but that's almost kind of the tone that Western companies need to take in China. And it's obvious. It's obvious what a priority it is for them. And from a business perspective, very understandably so. But it's definitely something to be aware of as far as a risk factor for the company.
I understand a company's fiduciary responsibility to make money. Apple's a publicly held company. This is a big market. But there is a risk going. There's a huge number of risks going into China. One, that the Chinese would just steal your intellectual property and say, thank you very much. That's not likely. But that's what happened to Microsoft. The other issue is, how is the rest of the world going to react to a China or to an Apple that moves into China, ignores human rights issues, ignores how the factories are run, and just says, yeah, we got a great new market. We don't care. Isn't there a risk? And
well, they've already been dealing with that, right?
Apple has.
To a degree with the Foxconn thing, right?
Right.
Apple has.
Yeah. After that New York Times expose.
You know, but those of us here, you know, we tacitly support that behavior in Apple because we
buy their products.
Complain about a that's it, right? So you have a $950 iPhone 6 Plus if you want the biggest one, and that's great. But in order to get that price to $950, they need to have underpaid by hour standards, underpaid workers.
I don't know if that's the case. I think it probably costs them $150, $200 to make. Somebody was saying Apple's price model is you multiply it by 3 and add $50. Isn't that right? Come on. Well, I mean, doesn't cost them $900 to make the iPhone 6 Plus.
Well, the labor costs are only
R&D, they're
R&D. All right. Okay.
Right? I mean, they've got to iterate on these things. They can't develop an iPhone and then let it sit for 6 years. They've got to come out with a new one next year, right? And so I think if they did move that manufacturing into the U.S. or started paying people at Foxconn U.S. wages, which would be totally crazy for a lot of reasons, it would cause a lot of unrest, I think. But if they chose to do that, it would make all of us who complain about Apple supporting unfair labor practices happy. And then we would also get to pay the price for that because you know that Apple's not going to eat that cost. They're going to pass it along to us as every business does.
You know, we have an interesting case here of Apple. There's a lot of pressure on Apple to build in the U.S. and to use U.S. suppliers. Of course, the reason they use Asian suppliers is because that's where the good suppliers are, and it's a very well-developed network, and you know everybody uses it. Everybody's paying the same cheap labor costs.
It's the world's factory,
right? So I don't know if they were responding to the pressure, but they make one deal with a U.S. supplier to supply Sapphire, and the whole thing blows up. I mean, just a terrible, nothing went right.
Yeah.
The company, can't deliver on the price they promised. They go bankrupt. They sued. They just dragged the whole thing into court. And Apple is, I'm not sure what they're doing. They seem like they're doing everything they can to keep this company alive. And then when it collapses, they're still trying to trying to figure out a way to continue to work with them. I just have the feeling that none of this would have happened if they'd been dealing with a Taiwanese.
Yeah, I got to point that out. That's right. Philip was actually in court in New Hampshire during that. We're going to talk about that. And, of course, I think about the Moto Maker plant, which was opened by Motorola with great fanfare, and was it Texas? And is closed now. They moved it out of the United States, I think, to Mexico. Apple does have one product made in the U.S., the Mac Pro. I doubt very many of them are made, but
Well,
it's not just the cost. I mean, the cost of a phone is like $4, and it wouldn't actually be that much higher in the U.S. because, you know, the degree to which things are automated. And the reality is a lot of the manual labor is further down the supply chain, but it's all the suppliers and the entire, as Philip said, the entire ecosystem that goes around it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, you know, back in the heyday of the U.S. auto manufacturing system, it wasn't just the automakers in Detroit. It was all the suppliers in Toledo and Akron and all these sort of places. Like there's an entire ecosystem that goes into creating these things. And that's entirely gone in the U.S. for the most part. And so I think,
but it's not just the ecosystem. I think, and Philip, you were kind of alluding to this. It's expertise.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, and the reality is wages have gone up quite a bit. For a high-end sort of engineer, they're going to be actually almost equivalent. Obviously, for a factory line worker, it's going to be much lower, but it's still at least double, if not more than it was just a couple of years ago, and significantly higher than it was 10 years ago.
But as you point out, the labor, I think this is what you meant. The labor costs on an iPhone are maybe $5.
Yeah.
Not the cost of an iPhone, but the labor cost of the iPhone.
Right, but that's the final assembly. Like there's obviously labor costs for each component.
You could triple that or quadruple it, and it still wouldn't really add significantly to the cost of making an iPhone.
You know, I mean, every little bit matters when it comes to margin and the bottom line. But the reality is like, and I think Steve Jobs said this at some point about like they're not coming back, and
the jobs are not coming back.
Right, and what that had to do with was not because of cost. It's because we've lost that. We've lost the ability to compete effectively in these sorts of things. And so you get a Mac Pro, you see those videos, it's highly automated. There's only a few people. All the stuff's made elsewhere and brought in and then snapped together.
Yeah. It's not really making jobs in the U.S. I want to take a break, and I do want to talk about Apple Pay. We got a lot more to talk about. It's great to have Philip Elmer-DeWitt from Fortune.com here. I hope you don't mind. I called you one of the senior statesmen of technology journalism. And,
yeah, I don't know. Am I older than you or not?
A little bit.
Okay.
Not much.
I just went on Medicare, so that's
You, me, Dvorak, and Pornell, and Pornell will always be older than all of us, so it's okay. We always have Jerry. We just hope, you know. Also with us, Dave Hamilton from Mac Observer and the Mac Geek Gab Fest. Did I say that right?
Yeah, we don't usually say it's a fest, but it is a party every time we do it, so that's a good thing.
And from Taiwan, Ben Thompson of Stratechery. Our show today brought to you by the folks at Citrix who do Citrix Go To Meeting. You see how we're doing this? I just love modern technology. It's really amazing. Here we can do a show with people all over the world, sit around the table and gab. Of course, we're using Skype, which means it's not working very well. See, if we were using GoToMeeting, it'd be working a lot better. Maybe we have to think about that. GoToMeeting is the way to collaborate, to work together. It's more than just video. Of course, they have crystal clear video with their HD video conferencing, but it's also screen sharing. That's how GoToMeeting was born, the idea that you could share a screen with somebody else all over the world. You could collaborate. You can work together with teams distributed as they are today. This is an incredible solution all over the world, at your desk or at your iPad. It works on mobile. It works on Mac. It works on PCs. It saves you time. You get more work done. You travel less. I love GoToMeeting. Schedule meetings in advance, or it's so easy to use. You can meet on the fly. Just press a button, start a meeting. And by the way, I know teams all over the world who collaborate with each other through GoToMeeting. They just leave it running. GoToMeeting, it allows you to work smarter, more efficiently, take more control of your time and resources, and it's free for the first 30 days when you visit GoToMeeting.com. Click the Try It Free button. GoToMeeting.com, click the Try It Free button. And we thank Citrix, as always, so much for their huge support. Dave, have you purchased anything with Apple Pay? Have you tapped your phone yet?
You know what's funny is the first place that I used Apple Pay was Rite Aid, believe it or not.
And the last time you'll be doing that.
It was literally 5 minutes after I did that, we started getting the emails in saying, hey, Rite Aid's going to cancel. I'm like, no, it literally just worked, and it worked perfectly, you know.
So what is it? And I don't know, Philip, have you used Apple Pay? Probably not.
Yeah, no. I went right down to buy some toothpaste right away.
And where did you use it?
You know, I usually go to CVS,
Okay.
But because CVS wasn't part of the team, I went to Walgreens, a little further away. Doesn't stay open 24 hours. Not quite as nice a store. But it worked. And then, like Dave, I found out that this what's the name
it's
of the thing?
called currency.
Currency, yeah.
Currency. And this is a system called MCX that actually was, I believe, created by Walmart.
Yep.
And will be adopted by, yes, Rite Aid, yes, CVS, Wawa, Come and Go. Never heard of some of these places, but the idea is that get how this works. Apparently, Rite Aid and CVS have shut down. They had Tap to Pay. It wasn't even designed for Apple Pay. It was designed to work with Android Wallet and other Tap to Pay solutions. But the NFC, what Apple's doing is not Apple only. It's a standard Eurocard, MasterCard, Visa, EMV standard that is a global standard. And so because Rite Aid and CVS already supported Tap to Pay, I remember I've used it at my CVS store. Who knew? It worked fine with Apple Pay until they said, whoops, we don't want it to work with Apple Pay.
But they're not just shutting down Apple Pay, right?
They're shutting it all down, which tells you how few people use it.
That's right. Or conversely shows you how successful Apple Pay is, or people predict it to be, despite the fact that it has been out, as of the time when they announced it, 4 days, right? Because it basically came out Monday when we were able to get 8.1. And so it's out 4 days. Oh, it's been available. Like you said, you could go and do this at Rite Aid. Nobody cared. Now it's been out 4 days. Only works with the iPhone 6, right? Both of them, but only them.
Because they're the only ones with NFC.
That's right. And there's no watch yet, so we can't use it with the, the iPhone 5 and that. And yet, no problem until Apple Pay's here, and now immediately we got to shut it down. This is in violation. And it always has been in violation of this. MCX is the company or the consortium, I guess. That
nobody used it.
Because nobody used it. That's right. Yeah, exactly.
So the way it works, and by the way, I've got a Google Wallet here on my Galaxy Note 4, and it's the same thing. You add a credit card to it. Apple has a nice little feature where you can scan. People said take a picture, but you're not. You're scanning the credit card. It sees the number. If it's, by the way, one of my credit cards, there was so little contrast it couldn't, but on the ones it could, it would see the number, it would see your name, it would see the expiration date, and all you had to enter in was the security code. It's pretty easy to get a credit card into the Apple Pay wallet. Unfortunately, a lot of banks aren't yet supporting it, so most of my credit cards didn't work, but American Express did. One of my MasterCards did. And any card you have registered with iTunes is going to work out of the box. You just have to enter in the security code. And then it's a pretty simple process, right, Dave? You go, tell me how it worked when it worked at Rite Aid.
Oh, yeah. No, it was, it's, and this is the thing versus currency, right? But you go up, you take your phone, you wave it close enough. You could tap the little unit.
But you don't have to.
But you don't have to. You get close enough, and suddenly the phone lights up, and it shows me my default card, and I could pick another card if I wanted, but I went and set my default card, and that's the one I wanted to use, and it said just hit your Touch ID, and you're done. It's
real fast.
100%.
Do we have, Chad, the video of Needles doing it?
Yeah, let me pull it up.
Because we sent out one of our intrepid reporters, Jeffrey Needles, to the local Whole Earth to buy chicken fingers, and he did it. And so I think we have video of the process. Now, get this. While you're thinking how easy that was, especially once you've set it up, it's just putting your thumb or your finger on the Touch ID, and that's it. There's no entry. Here's Jeff doing it.
You don't even have to wake your phone up, right?
Yeah, even if it's off, you just touch the Touch ID. So pause it right there real quick, or go back a little bit so we can see it, because this is the Whole Earth. This is what is it? Verifone, right? So it says Amex, Apple Pay. It's got that universal logo, which looks like a fish dinner with just the bones left. It's got looks like PayPass from MasterCard and Visa Discovered. All of those, if you had a pin in them, would work, right? So anything with NFC, you would just tap it, and it would work. Okay, go ahead. Let's play it, because he sees the Apple Pay.
First time in the store?
Yeah. Let's see. What do we do?
This is what do I do? It pops up. You put your finger on it. You don't even press. And really, seconds later, you're done. You've got chicken fingers. Okay,
Shut up and
get
take
this.
my money, right?
So get this. And they get a little picture of pumpkins because it's Whole Foods and they're earthy, crunchy. So get this. This is how currency would work. So before you can go to your Rite Aid or CVS, by the way, this won't work till next year anyway. But before you could go in your Walmart or your Rite Aid or your CVS, you'd have to download the appropriate app from the App Store or Google Play Store. By the way, this won't work with all credit cards, just certain debit cards and loyalty cards. So you have
no credit cards.
No credit cards, in fact. That's right. Just debit cards and loyalty cards.
That was the whole point, to get away from paying.
We don't want those. 3%. We don't want to give any money to MasterCard. So then you go up to the cash register, they ring you up, and then on the screen appears, it doesn't work with NFC, a QR code. So now you go into your phone and you find the app, you launch it.
Oh, no, before you go into your phone, before you can launch the app, you have to wake your phone up and unlock it.
Oh, yes,
Don't forget that step, right? I mean, there's a lot of steps here.
And then you launch the app and you take a picture of the QR code. The phone chews on it and goes, okay. And then sends it off to the cloud for authorization. And then I don't know how it gets back to the merchant now. Does a merchant have to take a picture of a QR code on your phone?
Your phone also needs to have a data connection.
So you turn your phone around and say, oh, I got a QR code here. And then it goes back. 5 hours later, you've paid for your chicken fingers.
It'd be easier to write a check.
It would be easier to cash check. But the whole point of this, and this is why Walmart created it, is they get your address, they get your phone number, they get your purchases, they get it all the information, and they give no money to MasterCard or Visa.
Right.
But, here's the thing. When I used Apple Pay at Rite Aid, we have a wellness points account with them because it's in our best interest, right? We're willing to share our purchase history with them, and then we get pretty significant discounts off of stupid things like cough drops,
Right.
And so it's worth it. And before I did my Apple Pay thing, I entered in my Rite Aid number. So I opted in at the point of purchase, as I do every time, to do this. Now, if, say, I wanted to, buy something that I didn't want on our thing, I could just not opt in, and there I am. All good. Apple Pay or not, they're not going to get my information if I don't do that. So Rite Aid's already got this tracking thing. Yeah, they still got to pay MasterCard their 2 points or whatever it is, but it doesn't make any sense to me.
Here's a picture. Dan Frommer posted a picture of his. He says, can't wait for the mobile payments app from the company that designed this receipt. And this is true. You go buy one thing at CVS, you get a 4-foot-long receipt from them with coupons, mostly for stuff you've already purchased at CVS because they know. So you say, Philip, this is a non-starter.
Well, a couple things. First of all, I think the killer feature about this Apple Pay thing is how fast the line moves.
I like that.
Yeah, because you know what it's like to wait behind people who are fishing in their wallet for their money, and then they're counting their change. Women, for some reason, count exact change. Men never do. or pulling out their credit cards. When you see people just sticking their phone there, making the purchase and moving on, and everybody else gets to move that much faster, that's really going to sell this service. The other thing, the reason I say it's a non-starter, and Ben, you may know more about this than I do, but apparently Alibaba used QR codes for their payment thing in competition with Union Pay, is that what it's called? And it turned out to be it's much simpler, but it turned out to be easily hacked. And people were putting little Trojan horses. They were redrawing, I guess, these little robot fingerprints and putting Trojan horses in and stealing people's bank information, then stealing their money. And the Chinese government in March halted it. They said Alibaba couldn't use QR anymore.
Wow.
So, you've got Apple Pay with the most secure payment system we have that works with a tap, and everybody's going to move through the line faster. And then to have to, the idea that all these companies are going to go back to the old QR system that never really took off just doesn't seem like it's going to happen. And I predict that all those 2 or 3 dozen companies that are supposedly part of this Walmart scheme will be trying to get out of their contracts as fast as they can.
Yeah, so it's a privacy invasion, it's a pain in the ass, and it's insecure. What could possibly go wrong?
No, Philip just said the key thing though is the contract. All these folks who are signed up for the umbrella service is called MCX, Merchant Exchange or something, and they've all signed exclusivity agreements. Whereas the MCX solution, the currency, will be the only form of the sort of payment that they'll take. And from what I understand, I haven't seen the contract, but I've talked to people who have talked to people who have seen the contract. There are significant penalties for breaking this, and so it's likely that CVS. I think there certainly is an angle where they and merchants in general are not happy with Apple Pay because they do lose identifying customer data, which is very valuable, and they do sell. I mean, people who are outraged at what Facebook and Google track. Boy, if you ever had an idea of what is tracked about your day-to-day purchases, would be frankly appalled. It's pretty incredible. That's part of it for sure. But there's also,
I think the whole thing was designed by Google to make us feel better about the data that Google collects.
Well, I mean, it's
you think we're bad? You want to see these guys?
I do think that. I tend to be more sympathetic to Google and Facebook on those points. But there's this contract here where there is an exclusivity contract.
That's bad because this is just look at the list of companies that are using this: Bed Bath & Beyond, 7-Eleven, Dunkin' Donuts. You're saying that if they have MCX currency, they can't do anything else? Best Buy?
For 3 years. For 3 years.
Right? The Gap, Dick's Sporting Goods.
I mean, the reality is that
Kmart,
contracts
Sears,
as GA Technology just demonstrated, or GT Advanced, you can get out of contracts. And I think it'll be fascinating to see the sort of pressure that happens here. To me, the big news here is kind of buried. It's that I don't think anyone really realized that Apple Pay would just work. I think there was an assumption that merchants would have to sign up and agree to accept Apple Pay. But actually, it turns out if you have the hardware, it will just work.
Because it's really a standard. It's not anything Apple created out of whole cloth.
Right, exactly. And so you do need the banks. But Apple has understood that they have a lot of leverage versus the banks because it's a little complicated. But I think from a merchant perspective, you only use a merchant occasionally. So yes, maybe some people will avoid CVS and go to Walgreens, but the reality is most people are going to go to what's close to them. Like in the moment of decision, like convenience will win.
You still can still use a credit card. You can still pay with cash, both of which
exactly. But when it comes to a bank, like if every time you can't use Apple Pay because your bank doesn't support it, like now it's impacting you so frequently that you will go to the trouble finding a new bank. So I think there's the leverage Apple has versus the banks is a lot different than they have versus merchants, which is why Apple's taking a skim off the banks, not off the merchants.
Right.
Apple, I mean, if Apple understands anything, it's leverage. And and then you combine that with by October 2015, merchants need to support chip and PIN, or else they assume a lot more risk in the transactions. Well, if you buy a new payment terminal today, it almost certainly has NFC, just because everything will have NFC these days. And so the implications are, again, I've been operating the assumption that Apple would not just need the hardware there, but also need merchants to agree to take it. But that's not the case. They just need to have the appropriate hardware in place, and it will work unless they turn it off. And there's been tons of research about if you have someone opt in, it's basically opt in versus opt out. Anything that's opt in is going to have much lower adoption than anything that is opt out. And this is the case here. And so at the end of the day, I think this is actually a great sign for Apple in that, one, there's going to be way more merchants that support it than I think any of us realized, and two, just the terrible PR bloodbath that CVS is going through right now is going to make a lot of merchants have pause about turning it off for whatever reason because they want data or whatever, and two is going to put a lot of pressure on this coalition because CVS isn't going to be the only one that feels the pain.
People are actually calling for boycotts of Rite Aid and CVS. That's not. I mean, how much is this going to hurt those companies that use MCX? They're not going to lose business, really, are they? I mean,
they could if Apple denies the currency app from the App Store.
Oh.
Well, no, no one's going to use no one's going to use the currency app.
It doesn't even matter if they do. It's what you're saying. Ban away. Doesn't matter. Nobody's going to use it anyway.
No, the competition is the credit card. I think it's not going to hurt them per se. There will be some people that just don't shop there. What it is I think what will move the needle is if retailers that use Apple Pay are actually seeing lift. I mean, Apple's consistent argument to these sort of companies, to music companies, to movie companies, to whatever they might be, is that you're giving up incremental sales because by making it more convenient and easier, people will buy more often. And you can be sure Apple will be marshaling evidence that, oh, so-and-so, you can see the keynote now next WWDC. Oh, X retailer now, adopted Apple Pay and their sales went up X%.
That's a big selling point. Sure.
No, that will be the selling point.
But Philip, you even said it yourself. You're not going back to that Walgreens. You did it once for Apple Pay, but CVS is easier, more complete, and nearer. You're going to continue to go there.
Yeah, that's true. But you know what? I fully expect CVS will be using Apple Pay by next year.
I think you're right, too. Yeah. This will be a very short order revolution.
One of the things that keeps coming up that I have a problem with the talking points about this is that Apple is not charging merchants, they're charging the banks, right? In order to use Apple Pay. But that's normal for this type of thing, right? The banks get charged. There's a cascade of how things work.
Because the banks pass it along to the merchant as credit card charges.
That's it. It's gonna, when you use your loyalty card, right? And we take credit cards here for a lot of things. And so when you use your loyalty card and you get miles or hotel points or whatever it is that you get, there is a cost for that. And there is a fixed dollar cost for what those cost for that transaction. And that is passed transparently all the way through to the merchant.
And then from them to us, of course.
And of course,
let's keep it going. Let's keep the pass-through going because we always end up paying in the long run.
Well, you have to, right? I mean, profit margins being what they are, it's just how it works. So when people say the banks are paying Apple Pay fees and it's not the merchants and therefore not the customers, that sort of rings false. I mean, of course, the merchants are going to get it, but hopefully with both Apple Pay and more so chip and, well, it's not chip and pin next year, it's chip and sign here in the U.S. for October. But when that comes, in theory, fraud costs go down, and then in theory, your discount rate goes down as long as you're, opting in as a merchant to this system and using it properly. And so maybe this incremental cost of Apple Pay, which is only 15 basis points to the bank, so it's not a huge number, but still, maybe your costs go down, and maybe it's a wash, and you don't really notice it in the end. But it's certainly merchants and therefore consumers are going to be eating these Apple Pay fees in one way or another. Your bank's not just going to say, "Oh yeah, out of the goodness of our heart."
Still a win, though.
No,
come on,
the issue is that the fees are the same whether you use a credit card or whether you use Apple Pay for the merchant. Like you're paying 2.9% in both cases. I mean, it varies by credit card. So no, but the point is that's why I think it is valid to say that merchants aren't paying anything. Because they're. But
it used to be that way with loyalty cards. The banks ate the fees, and then they decided, wait, we're not going to do this anymore. We're going to we're not just going to bake it into the discount rate. We're going to pass it through. It's how it works. Right. Eventually, it's going to come through.
Apple's not a stupid company. They're not going to sign these contracts with the banks and then allow the banks to pass it on. Like I would strongly suspect the agreements are kind of a most favored nation clause, in that the banks can't charge more than their standard rate for an Apple Pay transaction. I'd be shocked if it wasn't the case. So we'll obviously no one's going to see these contracts. I do think it is chip and pin coming, but regardless, everyone's going to need these new sort of terminals. So it's going to be interesting to see how it turns
Chip and pin can't come to the U.S. yet. It can. The terminals will support it. But the problem is we here in the U.S. will have no way of putting a pin on our card because it would require revamping the ATM system, which is why we'll go to chip and sign first. And then hopefully over time, as ATMs get their hardware revamped, we'll be able to go to chip and pin. But in October of next year, rather, is chip and sign here in the U.S.
And by the way, it's important to note that the reason that Walmart created MCX and these merchants are doing it is not so much because they want a better payment system. They just want to screw the credit card companies. Mike Dudas quotes former Walmart CEO Lee Scott, "I don't know that MCX will succeed, and I don't care as long as Visa suffers." That's what it's really. That's what it's really about. Let's face it. All right, we're gonna.
No, I mean, it's amazing. I mean, I obviously my site is people paying with credit cards for the membership options, and it's by far my biggest expense. Like,
will you support Apple Pay?
It's more unclear because I have digital content. So I think if I want to monetize, it needs to be through a traditional in-app purchase.
Okay.
Which I would love to support anyway. I think that the volume you make up makes up for the fees.
Yeah, Apple gets
that
30%
Apple would charge
anyway. So
yeah, but I have a lot of stuff to get done before I get an app written. So
take the money. iTunes. This is more bad news for the music industry. Apple iTunes sees a huge drop in music sales, at least 13%. That is, given that Apple is the #1 retailer of music in the world, or at least in the U.S., that is since the start of the year, 13 to 14%. Huge drop. Global revenue from downloads, according to the International Federation of the Phonographic Industry, fell last year 2.1%. So it's accelerating. And probably explains why Apple bought Beats. Not good news for music sales in general, because musicians do not make much money from Beats or Spotify or any of these other solutions.
Didn't we assume that this is what was going on when they bought Beats?
Yeah. They must have seen it coming, right? The rumor is, and it's not confirmed, that Apple will rebrand the Beats product, which is a subscription product, and fold it into iTunes sometime next year.
I'd be surprised if they don't keep the Beats name. But
you think so? It's such a strong brand, right?
Yeah, I mean, the strong brand with the demographic they're trying to reach.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, Apple has better numbers than whatever group this was, the International Federation of. They saw this coming earlier. I assume.
I'm sure they have a dashboard on Tim Cook's desk with a downward pointing arrow.
I'm glad I'm not a musician, but it's a tough life. It's a tough life anyway. Even if you see these guys dragging their equipment left, and they don't make that much money, and they.
Somebody just said it's karma. The music industry has been robbing musicians for years. It's about time they lost money. The music industry lost money.
I suppose, yeah.
But the musicians aren't making any more. I mean, it's not like the money's being. There's just less money now.
Nobody's buying music. Period.
Well, right, and to be fair, most musicians, even what we would consider from the outside world fairly successful musicians, never really made money selling music. You would if you got into a decades-long career where you really started to control your own stuff. But especially with the labels involved, for your first wave of whatever your contract is, you didn't make a penny from selling your music. You made all of your money out there touring and like Philip says, schlepping your equipment or perhaps paying people to schlep your equipment. And yes, all those roadies get paid out of the band's funds, not the label's funds, right? But, you're out there earning every dollar, playing to hopefully larger and larger crowds. But so the fact that the money goes away.
The Rolling Stones made money. The legend is that they learned from the Beatles' mistakes and got good contracts. No, I mean, the game seems to be now to make the money from the venues. To use the recordings as sort of loss leaders to bring people to gather an audience, and then you make it from the ticket sales. But even that's tough work. I mean,
that's just the reality of being in an industry where the cost of production of your product is zero. I mean, it's very it's. I mean, not to be clear, creating a CD was always trivial as far as costs go, but there's something in consumer psychology where there's just a greater willingness to pay for a physical item than it is for a digital one. And it's not, I mean, if you think about it from a very sort of pedantic sort of standpoint, it's actually quite rational. I mean, because it really doesn't cost anything to create that. And I think you'll see this with more and more things. I mean, it's the way my business works. It's the way lots of these businesses work, where you offer a product for free and you get some small percentage of that that will pay for additional content, will pay for T-shirts, will pay for concert tickets, will pay for the vinyl boxed version that's costs $100 and has extra photos and collectibles and all these sorts of things in it. And it's in some ways, I think, a return to the way music really was. Almost the last 50 years of the money that was made in music or in newspapers or in lots of other these sorts of industries that have been disrupted is almost an accident of history.
I kind of agree with you on that. The platinum record era was a blip. Although I just spent a lot of money to get tickets to see Fleetwood Mac. I mean, there's still money in concerts.
Because you're buying an experience.
Yeah. We're going to take a break. Boy, we've got a great panel. Some of the smartest people in the biz. Dave Hamilton is here from the Mac Observer, from Stratechery. That's the name of the blog, stratechery.com. Go there, buy it. Give this man money, Ben Thompson.
Yeah, just to be clear, the blog itself is free.
It's free to read, but then you can subscribe to the real insights.
Something like that.
The good stuff is... Actually, I'm not a subscriber. I should subscribe because I love the blog. Your insights are amazing. Also here, Philip Elmer-DeWitt from Fortune.com, and this is a lot of fun. We're going to talk more in just a second. Philip was in the courtroom this week when Apple and GT Sapphire perhaps made a deal. We'll talk about that. But first, a word from Squarespace, the place to host your next website. Not only the best hosting in the world, but the best content management system. The software and the hardware, they all go together to give you an incredible experience. Squarespace.com. They're constantly improving the platform. It's Squarespace 7, I think, just launched. And you know what? You need this because the web, the standards, the way the web looks, the way the web works is changing so rapidly. You don't want to have to think about that or deal with it, and Squarespace takes care of that for you. You'll start with one of 25 gorgeous templates. Every one of them mobile responsive, so they look great at any size screen. They all have e-commerce. They're all state-of-the-art CSS, and it's just beautiful. Now, if you're a developer, you can get in there, and they've got a wonderful developer platform. That's the logo designer, which is really great too. But they also you don't need to be an expert in anything. You just need to be an expert in your content, your product, and put it up on the Squarespace site. So easy to use. But if you want help, they have live chat and email support 24/7. And their newly redesigned help site for easier access to self-help articles and video workshops is just awesome. They start at as little as $8 a month, and that includes the free domain name when you sign up for a year. They've got free apps like the Squarespace Metric app for iPhone and iPad. Lets you check your site stats like page views and unique visitors and even social media followers. You could post with the blog app, make text updates, tap and drag images to change layouts on your iPad or your iPhone, monitor comments on the go. Gorgeous code, great hosting, never down. Nobody can bring it down either. I just love it. And I want you to try it. This is the best part. This is how confident they are. Just go there and press the Get Started button. You've got 2 weeks free. You don't need to give them a credit card or anything. Just start building that website. You can even import your data from your existing blog. When you do decide to sign up for Squarespace, all I ask is you use our offer code TWIT, T-W-I-T. We'll get you 10% off on your new account. And you'll be showing your support for This Week in Tech. Thank you so much, Squarespace.com. Don't forget the offer code is TWIT. So I don't know if, Philip, do you think this reflects on the American tech industry, or it reflects on Sapphire, or it reflects on Apple? GT Advanced was offered almost $500 million by Apple alone to build Sapphire furnaces. For some reason, this Sapphire supply was never used. People thought Apple might use it on the iPhone 6 Plus. Shortly after the iPhone was announced, GT went bankrupt, filed for Chapter 11 reorganization because Apple apparently hadn't used its Sapphire, and they owed them a lot of money on the Sapphire manufacturing plant in Arizona. During the back and forth, some information was revealed about the contracts Apple had required of GT, including a non-disclosure clause that had a $50 million penalty for leaking any secret information about their relationship with Apple. $50 million. On Monday, apparently, they reached an agreement not yet approved by the court, that GT would sell the Sapphire furnaces, and whatever they got, however little, they would give to Apple, and that would satisfy their debt to Apple, which was hundreds of millions of dollars. You were in the courtroom. The judge still needs to approve this, right?
Right, and he's a tough judge. He was very skeptical, and he basically warned Apple the week before that he'd looked at these documents that they're trying to keep secret, and he didn't see. He was having trouble finding anything that justified the kind of security wrap they were trying to put around it. I think there's a lot of things going on here. I think the $50 million per violation of an NDA agreement may be the most interesting piece of news to come out of it. We all knew that Apple had some magic way of keeping secrets, and
now we know
find out that it's not magic at all. It's $50 million per violation. And GT, here's the thing: when you file for bankruptcy, you're supposed to tell the people who you're not going to pay, and to whom you owe money, and you're not going to pay it back, and the employees that you're going to lay off. You're supposed to tell them what went wrong. That's part of the deal with bankruptcy, and GT does a lot of things. It makes furnaces. What it was doing for Apple was something different. It was actually going to make Sapphire. It was going to go. It was not just make the furnaces, but actually make the Sapphire.
Had it not made Sapphire before?
No, its business was to sell furnaces to people who made Sapphire.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so it was really a change of their business practice, and it turned out they weren't as good at making Sapphire as they were at making the furnaces. I
mean, we don't know what happened. There were rumors that the yield rate was once the Sapphire got to the assemblies in China, that the yield rate was 25%, and that might be why Apple killed it. Maybe it added significantly to the cost. We don't really know what happened.
No, we don't. They finally did file the agreements with a lot of things X'd out, and mostly what was X'd out was the amount, the quantity of Sapphire, and the prices. And you have to think that it was a matter of money, that they couldn't deliver the Sapphire of the quality they needed at the price they needed, right. And it made it uneconomical to put Sapphire on the iPhones. That's the assumption, So we have these documents. The main one is something called the Squiller Declaration. This is the CEO.
It sounds like a novel by one of those, like a Grisham novel, the Squiller Declaration.
Well, the Squiller Declaration, it's an affidavit by the COO of GT Advanced Technologies, who was, presumably knows what happened and what went wrong. He gave this affidavit and laid it out, and Apple has been trying ever since to keep that secret, to keep it sealed up.
So there must be a smoking gun in there, although it sounds like the judge doesn't think so.
Yeah. Well, the judge may not be sensitive to the kinds of things that Apple thinks it needs to keep secret for competitive reasons.
Right. Things like how many phones or how many watches, because some of these watches are supposed to have Sapphire.
Well, there's a lot of people who would like to know what the story is, not the least of which is the Wall Street Journal, which got thrown out of the courtroom when the Squiller Declaration came up for discussion. And Dow Jones has a lawyer there every day saying, wait a minute, we have a right to know what the story is, and they're going to continue to fight for it. And the state of New Hampshire, this is the largest bankruptcy in the state of New Hampshire, and the state itself, the assistant attorney general is there every day saying, wait a minute, we want to know why these jobs are being lost.
But they're being lost not in New Hampshire, but in Arizona and Massachusetts, right? 650 employees at the Mesa plant in Arizona. Some jobs cut in Salem, where the...
in Salem, Massachusetts, right, you are. Yeah.
But I guess the state, since it's a company doing business in the state of New Hampshire.
Right. It's a Manchester company, so that's why they care. Anyway, well, I spoke to a lawyer who knows about this stuff at the end of the week, and she was saying that that we won't know till we have a hearing where the judge actually says what his reaction is, whether he buys it, whether the stuff that they delivered, the redacted agreements and the I don't think they've released any of the Squiller declaration. Anyway, whether enough has been revealed about what went wrong for him to approve this deal.
Right.
I think they've made a strong case that it's probably the best thing for GT. They go back to the business of making furnaces. It's probably the best thing for Apple. They're going to get some of their money back. They're actually a buyer of these furnaces. They may be bidding on these things. There's a lot of language in the agreement about how much Apple would have to pay, or what the deal is if Apple turns out to be the company that ends up with these furnaces. So anyway, it's a complicated mess, and one of the virtues of moving from New York up to Western Massachusetts, that it turns out that the courtroom where this is happening is in Springfield, and it's a 40-minute drive for me. So I get to have some fun as a reporter.
You and the Dow Jones News Service.
Right. Those poor guys, they drove all the way from New York the first day to find out that it had all been postponed.
I don't feel bad. They're getting $450 an hour plus travel fees.
The lawyers.
Is that all?
Yeah, a lot more than that.
More than that. Sorry.
More.
Pardon me.
There were 36 lawyers in the room, all in expensive suits.
Oh my God!
Bankruptcy is not fun, and it's costing somebody a fortune.
None of this.
Yeah, there really is a lot. There's a lot that really stinks here, in my opinion. I mean, the GT Advanced has in their filing, they have more assets than liabilities. So what they had was a liquidity issue where basically they didn't have enough they didn't have enough free cash to pay their bills, even though technically they still had more assets than liabilities, and that's usually due to a management error when it comes to keeping what's called working capital. Like, you should always have enough cash on hand to pay your debts, and there's a lot of people, I think, just reading around, thought that the deal in general with Apple wasn't a great deal, and it was that supposedly some companies turned it down before GT Advanced agreed to do it. And meanwhile, their stock took off like a rocket. And oh, by the way, their CEO has sold $10 million worth of stock in the last year.
The day before.
Well,
the day before
was it was like $700,000. But even over the past year, he's sold a significant amount, when the year prior, he hadn't sold any. And now it almost, there's all these details that no one knows. I think, Philip's being much more careful about it than I am. But I mean, it kind of, regardless of what happens, the CEO and several other executives have profited handsomely, and they're out of this contract that they suddenly decided was onerous, that wasn't onerous a year ago.
And Apple has taken probably pennies on the dollar for what they.
Well, not just that, but they're out of the contract for a management error. Which I mean, was that an accident? Like, how does this happen that you make this mistake when it was presumably you knew it was coming for a while? There's a lot that stinks here, and I suspect that this is going to drag out for a while, whether it be through this hearing, or whether it be through shareholder lawsuits, or whether it be through all kinds of stuff. Because the reality is there's a lot of people that are out of a lot of money, and there's no better way to generate lots of activity around finding the truth than when there's a couple $1 billion at stake.
So $450 an hour, that's not enough. What are these lawyers getting an hour?
$1,200 an hour.
What?
Oh yeah. These guys are New York lawyers, right? I hire Texas
guys,
lawyers.
Yeah.
$1,200 an hour?
Senior guys.
And there's 36 of them in a room?
Well, there might be some there at $450. The new guys. Seriously. I know it's crazy, but it's true. Yeah.
It's like $50,000 an hour just sitting in that courtroom.
Yeah, probably close to 15 to 20, realistically. Wow. Yeah.
And they
it's crazy.
And they spent a good 8 hours waiting for Apple and GT to cut this deal.
Just cooling their heels.
We were just sitting there the whole time. Yeah.
There is a class action lawsuit against GT that's just been filed was filed earlier this week on behalf of shareholders. So the shareholders want to know. The hundreds of people in Mesa, Arizona who are out of work want to know. Everybody wants to know.
Well, there were 4 Asians, 4 Chinese. There may have been Taiwanese. I'm not sure. Maybe they were Japanese anyway. 4 Asians. Their company had supplied compressors, 2,000 compressors that were somehow involved in creating the Sapphire. I don't know how many millions they're owed, but I felt so sorry for them because here it's all happening in English. They could barely, they're on the line for millions of dollars and they can barely follow what's going on. These poor guys.
Somebody in the chat room.
The emails I get are not about, the emails I get are not what's going to happen to these poor workers. The emails we get are, does this mean the Apple Watch is delayed?
Oh, right? Come on. Who cares? Really? Is anybody really worried about whether the Apple Watch ships in January or February?
Yeah.
Really? Is there a pent-up demand? I'm just dying to get my hands on a $5,000 Apple Watch. I can't wait.
You're playing the other side. You know that there's a huge demand. I mean, look at people lined up before the Apple event at the Apple Store.
But that was for a known commodity that everybody needs. Everybody needs a smartphone. And that was a known commodity. It was an iPhone.
10 years ago, we needed smartphones, Leo?
No, but that's that's 10 years ago.
I know.
Now we need smartphones. Do we really need Apple Watches? Really?
People lined up for the first iPhone.
Chinese New Year is coming up, and I think it's going to be a big deal.
You'll think it'll be on Chinese New Year, the Apple Watch will?
Ben, wasn't that your speculation that that's what the timing's about?
I think that they would prefer to have had it this holiday, but I think
obviously. So then, what's the next holiday?
Well, the Chinese New Year is February 19th.
Oh, so it's right next to Valentine's Day. It's perfect.
Quite late this year, yeah. And I don't think that'll be delayed. I did a little bit of research about this, and apparently there was actually a little bit of the last numbers I could find were about 2012, and there was a little bit of a glut in Sapphire production actually, which to me suggests that the plant, there's lots of speculation about whether the iPhone 6 was ever going to have Sapphire.
Yeah.
To me, this bankruptcy and the fact that they even did it suggests that they did want to do Sapphire on the phone, which would require a tremendous increase in capacity.
Right. But there's plenty for watches.
It's not even all the watches. The low end, the sport watch, the $350 one, will not have Sapphire. So it's only the more expensive watches, and the surface area isn't that great.
Right.
And the yields are going to be better because it's smaller physically.
Right.
So I don't suspect this really having any impact on the watch, on its timing at all.
Do you think he'll be ready mid-February? Really? Do you think that's when we'll see the Apple Watch? It actually is good timing for the. They'd probably like to have it in the quarterly results for Q1.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't think anyone really knows how much of an impact it's going to have on the results. I mean, Apple is the iPhone company and will be for the first.
We know Apple can make and break a business. I remember from the Steve Jobs biography that when the iPhone first came out, they wanted a hard material for the surface. Corning had developed Gorilla Glass, but had shuttered the plant because there was no market for it. Jobs found him and said, "Can you reopen that plant? We think we could use this Gorilla Glass you've invented." And of course, I'm sure it's a huge profit center for Corning.
Oh, it's massive. Well, it's not just Apple. They make the glass for everyone. Yeah.
In fact, Apple never says that it has Gorilla Glass, does it?
No. Now, the original, the low end iPhone of the original iPhone was supposed to have a plastic screen, not a glass screen.
And Jobs saw it all scratched up and said, "Whoa." Shortly, as I remember, shortly before launch, I mean, like a month or two before launch, they said we need a better material.
Yeah, they said we upgraded it, right? That was their marketing, which was genius. We've upgraded a product that you don't have yet. Yeah, that's right. But I wonder if we'll see the same thing with the sport version. Now, Sapphire's not cheap, but the sport watch to me seems like the one that you would want Sapphire in more than any other if you're using it while you're bouncing around and doing other things. Yeah.
So the minimum price we know, because Apple announced it, is $350, and is that the sport watch?
Yeah,
right.
With the plastic band and kind of crappy looking, and the one that they could say it's $350, but nobody wants.
Mm-hmm.
And then I
suspect to be the biggest seller.
You think? Well, yeah, because who's going to spend more than $350 on such a speculative product?
Well, and here's the thing: we've got these gold one at the top end, right?
Which is going to be like I mean, most people agree if it really is 24 karat gold, it's going to $6,000.
If it's $6,000, I'll buy every one that I can and sell it for the gold. There is not a single gold. Seriously, look around at watches. There's not a gold watch on the market for less than 10 grand, and most of them are in the $20,000 range. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, you want like a two-tone watch, then maybe you can get into the $4,000 to $8,000 range, right? But if you've got real gold in that thing, which is no. And here's the thing. If I buy a gold Rolex today, let's say, right, and I spend $25,000 on it, in 5 years, I can sell it for that same $25,000 used, and in 10 years, I can sell it for $30,000.
Right.
Okay. Now, let's say the gold Apple Watch is $5,000, and there's no way it's going to I'll eat these words, and it'll be a great meal of crow because I'll have a gold Apple Watch on while I do it. But let's say it's $5,000, which it's not going to be. Now, 2 years from that day, even 2 years from now, and let's say it's 3 months from being released. 2 years from now, that watch is obsolete. The tech in it is old.
Zero.
Worthless.
Although I do have to point out that the Ford Museum just bought the Apple One for $900,000. One of the Apple Ones for $900,000. So if you hold it long enough, it could be worth something.
No, seriously. I don't think they're going to make very many of them. I don't think they're looking to cut into Rolex's business with this particular.
It's that middle one. Not the Sport, not the Edition. What's the name of the one in the middle?
It's just the Apple Watch.
The watch.
No name.
So I think there's a few things going on here. First off, I know John Gruber and I were on a podcast and kind of speculating that what if which would be shocking, that the S1, which is this kind of resin, it's already this entire system in a chip. What if that could be upgraded? That would kind of change the entire conversation.
You
around
swap
things.
the inside out.
Yeah, but two, what I've heard kind of through the grapevine is there's a strong suspicion at a minimum you will be able to trade it in. The gold one anyway. Who knows? This is pure speculation. But three, again, coming back to the Chinese market in particular, there are definitely people that will buy a gold Apple Watch because they can buy a gold Apple Watch, and because it will have. You will wear that, it'll have a lot of status attached to it. It will be a very a sort of thing where it's valuable because it's expensive. Again, I suspect Apple's going to have some sort of program to deal with the obsolescence. But no, I agree. It's going to be several grand. Probably $5,000 or above. And no, they're not going to sell a ton of them. But at the same time, they're probably going to sell more than most people suspect.
I apologize. It's 18 karat, not 24 karat.
That 24 karat would be too soft.
Yeah.
All golden watches is 18 karat.
18. Yeah.
$5,000 would be incredibly disruptive in the gold watch market.
Yes.
Right?
Seriously.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm in the wrong business.
That'd be very cheap.
Oh, you totally. Yeah.
Maybe a gold watch manufacturing lawyer.
Yeah. Exactly. Now I know why they have to charge $1,200 an hour.
They got to buy gold watches.
They got to buy gold watches. So it says early 2015. I guess early to a normal person would be in the first few months, right?
Early
could
for
be
Apple
negotiated as any time before July 1st.
That's what it usually means for Apple.
Exactly.
They get it out in June.
Okay. Yeah, because we haven't even seen a prototype. The Apple Watches they were showing off were running a demo. We don't know what
Some
was
of them were.
Could have been anything. Well, Tim Cook's wearing one. I presume his works, but who knows?
The one they put on us was a demo running a loop, and it was non-interactive. But the one that the employees were wearing, that was you could touch it and do things.
It
with
would do
Obviously,
things.
there was a. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Now, I'm sure there was a limited path you could walk, and they knew this path, which stands to reason.
Oh, they didn't let you touch it. They touched it.
I did not get to wear the one that was
But you
interactive,
got to touch
but I
his?
did get to touch it, yes. At times.
Did you push the button? Did you push the...
I did. Yes.
Okay.
And then all these security guards descended on me.
Was it good touch or bad touch?
What was weird was the haptic thing was interesting because that was on my wrist, right?
Yeah.
And but really he put it on my wrist, and it's important to say he put it on my wrist, right? I didn't put it on it. I think it's because they wanted it tight enough for that tap engine to work.
Interesting, yeah.
Right.
Which kind of band did it have? Did it have that beautiful shimmery metal band? That's the one I want.
I tried the shimmery metal. I tried a lot of them. Of course. Why not? You're right. You're there.
You're there. You're looking at him.
I was paying attention to his because that was the one that was interactive, but I knew at some point I would feel these taps and 2 or 3 minutes in, I'm like, this is a 4-minute demo that loops on the watch. He said, how come I haven't felt it yet? It was because I was waiting for a cell phone style buzz.
Oh, it's not that big a buzz?
It's not a buzz. It literally feels like someone is tapping you with 2 fingers.
That's too creepy.
It's weird, but it's nice. It's not jarring like a buzz is.
It's a nice touch.
It's like, oh yeah, it's good touch. It's good touch.
Are you gonna buy one, Dave?
Obviously, he's gonna buy the gold one.
I will buy one. Here's the thing. I'm a watch guy, right?
Are you? I love watches.
Yeah. So I own more than I should. But I don't. I will buy one of these because this is my job. But in order for the Apple Watch to work, I think it's going to need to be your daily driver. It needs to be the one you wear 90% of the time in order for it to do all the things that it's going to do for you, at least from a tracking and fitness thing.
But see, as a watch buff, you wear a different watch every day, I bet you.
I don't want to give up on all my other watches, right? So, yeah, Apple has a weird thing because they either need to convince watch guys like us to give up on everything else and only wear the Apple Watch. That's one segment of the possible market. Oh, and we have to have an iPhone 5 or later already, right? Or they need to convince people that don't wear a watch to now start wearing one. It's an interesting little twist that they've got going on.
I feel bad for Pebble. I feel like they're kind of the pioneers in the business, and gosh, they just can't. For Android Wear is all. I mean, by the way, I've been wearing a Moto 360 now for probably a month or two. And
is it your day? Do you wear it all the time?
I like it. Yeah,
it's awesome. Yeah,
and it's actually useful. You know, what's great for is nav. As you're walking, it buzzes, and when you have to turn and you look down, it says, "Oh, turn left," and it's really great for that.
Yeah, that's the right interface for that.
It's perfect, and even while you're driving, you can look at it.
Now Ben has an elaborate theory that that the real watch isn't going to come out till they can afford to put. Until it carries a SIM.
Because then it could have connectivity.
Right.
Well, already Samsung makes a watch. It looks a little bit like a molded iPhone on your wrist, but it already makes a watch with connectivity, right, Ben?
Yeah, no, it's feasible.
It's big.
Looks ridiculous. It's huge, and the battery life is atrocious.
Yeah.
But no, I to me that's the end game here. I mean, I think connectivity will flow to, and the kind of key thing in your existence will flow to the smallest, most personal item that's always with you. And I think actually in 5 years or so, we will actually have large phones. We'll have iPhone Pluses or Android equivalent.
Isn't that funny? We're moving in that direction.
Well, no, exactly, because it's better for everything except for portability,
right?
And which leaves a great opening for a thing on your wrist, and so we'll actually use our phones less. The problem now is because what's on our wrist can't stand alone. But to me, that's okay. It's okay because everyone is already carrying a phone with them, so it's not like making your life any more difficult to wear a watch. It's more additive. But then a few years down the line, and so you have the watch in the market, you have developers building for it, you have it getting better, just like the iPhone got better, just like Android got better. And then in a couple of years, when technology has improved to the point, or battery technology in particular has improved to the point where it's viable to have a standalone watch, you'll happen to have the entire ecosystem there, you'll have the UI all worked out, and you'll end up, I think, leaving your iPhone in your bag or sitting home a little more often than you did today.
I hope that's true. I'm ready for that. I'm a little skeptical of it, and I'd like to see it, but I hope that's true.
Well, I am. It's easy to be skeptical of that we would carry the internet in our pocket, 15 years ago. I think it's just the course of technology.
Actually, you know what? It's not true. This is a logical. The smartphone is a logical kind of procession from a computer, and it doesn't. If you'd seen a Newton 15 years ago, it's just made sense. I think a watch is a bigger leap. Wearables are a bigger leap. That's a different.
Everyone
smartphone makes sense in retrospect. But
no, I predicted. Exactly. No, I have a video of me predicting this exact thing 15 years ago. It just made sense.
Yeah. Well, Gene Roddenberry predicted it.
Yeah.
40 years ago.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, he didn't predict a watch. So there you go.
So Philip was worried that this show, he said, it's not really 2 hours, is it? Philip, are you bored?
No, but I'm getting hungry.
All right, we're going to move her along now. If you want to get some chicken fingers, I know a place. Our show today, good to have you all, by the way. Great panel, great discussion. Our show today brought to you by Shutterstock.com. Let me just check, because every time I do this ad, I like to see how many 43,766,976 royalty-free stock images on Shutterstock. They added nearly 300,000 images last week. And you might say, well, how am I going to find the image I want? Well, they have a great search. I mean, it's a remarkable search. Give me a noun. How about donut? We just had some delicious donuts. Oh, there's some donuts. Now, that's just the beginning, because now you can refine your search. I've got donuts, but maybe I want photos or vectors or illustrations. Do I want horizontal or vertical images? How about the categories? You want donuts with people? How about only donuts with people? In fact, how about only donuts with people 70 years or older? How about you can, I'm not kidding, you can narrow it down. And with that many choices, you're really great. You can also choose the color palette. And if you're a blogger or you have a publication, you're really going to want to make sure that it looks great with your site. I just am a huge fan. They have new, they have popular, they have relevant, and they have undiscovered. That's always the place I go at Shutterstock.com. These are the undiscovered donuts. People haven't found these yet. Hidden donuts at Shutterstock.com. They also have, if you click the footage tab, a lot of great video footage, more than 2 million royalty-free stock video clips. If you sign up for Shutterstock now, you can get free images, free video clips every week. You don't need to give them a credit card. See, they got music, too. Podcasters love this. I'll tell you, though, I've been noticing in the credits lately of a lot of movies, you will see Shutterstock credited because filmmakers use Shutterstock all the time. Bloggers, publications. It's just a great resource for horse-headed people. Shutterstock.com. I want you to take a look. Sign up for that free account so you could save images out to your there you go. There was one. There's an old man eating a donut. I love it. You can save those images out to your Lightbox, share them with friends, all of that free. You don't have to give them a credit card. But if you decide you want to buy a subscription, we have the 25 image a day subscription. It's awesome. Do use the offer code TWIT1014 and you'll get 20% off. 20% off your image subscription package. That's a great deal. Shutterstock.com. Browse around. Create an account. It's free to do so. And then if you decide to buy, 20% off when you use the offer code. It's TWIT1014. We love them. Shutterstock.com. By the way, somebody was looking for your podcast, Ben. It's not called Stratechery. That's the site, stratechery.com. The podcast is Exponent. Exponent.fm, is that right? Oh, he disappeared. Shh. I said he could disappear if he wished. He has a 3-year-old who is now awake, probably. Roku, according to the Wall Street Journal deal book, is considering a public offering. People briefed on the matter on Friday. They're working with Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, Citigroup. It's because this new Jobs Act allows you to do stealth groundwork for an IPO. They actually could be doing this already under the Jobs Act. If you have less than $1 billion in revenue, you could file confidentially. I think it's an interesting play, given that Apple is about to, I think, explode the Apple TV sometime next year by putting in apps, put an app store. You already see people like HBO and now Lionsgate announcing that they're going to go direct to customers. I think that's fascinating, too. Okay, Ben's back. We can. What's the podcast? Exponent.fm, is that right?
That's right.
Okay. People were looking for it. So, very interesting story that Lionsgate is going to consider taking not all, but some of its films, along with the Tribeca Film Festival, and sell them direct to consumers. I think when you combine that with CBS's announcement, it's going to stream online, bypassing the cable companies. HBO says some point next year, HBO Go will be something you could subscribe to without a cable company subscription. We're about to see a very big shift in IPTV.
There's one thing that will make that all happen or not, I believe, and that's the NFL. When they allow streaming of games or just the ability to watch a game as people can do in Germany now without having a cable subscription, when that goes away,
well,
that will be the tipping point.
Didn't they stream the Super Bowl this year? I think they did, and I can't remember if you had to have a subscription or not. If you had a Verizon account, you did not.
Yeah, Verizon's got that deal. That's right. That's right.
I think we're very close. You know, the NBA is doing this. They're bypassing ESPN. Or actually, I think it's with ESPN's help.
Yeah, I mean,
the NFL makes a lot of money from the networks.
Yeah.
I mean, a truck ton. So
well, but it's really Comcast and Time Warner, the big cable companies you got to fear.
That's right.
They're not happy about this at all.
No, I actually disagree. I think that, ESPN is doing this, but you have to, with ESPN, you have to either have the ESPN service, or two, the stuff that they sell directly is for games that are not televised otherwise. So they're games that you can also get through NBA League Pass. If you get NBA League Pass or like MLB or whatever, like the nationally televised games are blocked out if you're in the U.S. And the point is to protect those contracts. And the reality is, for the HBO thing, to my opinion, has been way. I do think that change is coming, but the HBO thing has been way overplayed, in my opinion. And the reason is because HBO was already only ever making money from people that watch HBO. Like, HBO is not part of your standard cable package. You have to pay extra for it. So it's a small step to go from people paying for HBO via their cable company to people paying HBO directly. But the fundamentals of their business model have not changed. For
Except
ESPN,
that they require currently a cable subscription to watch them.
Right, but that's because
and if you're going to watch HBO currently, you have to get it through your cable company.
But that's because HBO doesn't have the capability of collecting that money currently.
They're going to piss off their distributor.
But the difference, but HBO, like right now, Time Warner rejected, News Corporation's bid to take them over. They have a lot of pressure to show growth, so they're much more motivated to take on these sort of risks now than they were previously. The difference with ESPN and any other cable network is ESPN makes money from every single cable subscriber, whether or not they watch ESPN. Which means, so ESPN charges more than anyone. It's like $5.50 per subscriber. So ESPN's making money from all these people that do not watch ESPN. That's very different than HBO, that only makes money from people who explicitly get HBO. Right. And so for ESPN to change this model is to forego a much, much, much more money than HBO is foregoing.
Got it.
And so HBO, I think, is way overplayed as an indicator.
So you're saying when ESPN goes, then pay attention.
ESPN will be the last to go because they have the most at stake in the current system,
right? And
that's why they paid out the nose for NBA. That's why sports fees are going through the stratosphere, because the reality, you see lots of people on Twitter at the HBO think, well, I just need sports now, I can cut the cord. Well, guess what? Everyone knows that, which is why sports
You're not the only one
anywhere.
saying that, buddy.
No, exactly, because sports it's one of those things where
you got to watch live.
You got to watch live. People will pay for it. They'll pay begrudgingly, but they will pay.
Yep.
And that's why the fees are so high. The fees are high. It's not just the advertising thing, watching it live. They're high because it's people. If people will pay for cable simply to get their sports, and that's also why we have these great shows like AMC, for example, like The Walking Dead or Mad Men or FX, The Americans, like creating this amazing TV. Is because what they've realized is the best way to make money is not to get more commercials. It's to create must-see shows where you can increase your carriage fee that you can charge the cable companies, and which of course is passed on to us. And all this sort of stuff, all this great TV we're getting is actually a byproduct of this system that we all claim to hate. But actually, if you look at it from a strictly economic perspective, is actually a pretty good deal.
How much did CBS pay for Thursday night, and did they make money on it? Their ratings were good, I think.
I'm sorry, pay for what?
CBS pay for Thursday Night Football.
Oh, a ton of money.
Ton of money, of course.
It's the NFL is both the highest rated and the most expensive. They
won every Thursday night since early September with their NFL broadcast.
I think they were winning Thursday nights before, but I mean the NFL is so valuable that they moved it all to Monday night. And
Larry Page is reorganizing Google, promoting Sundar Pichai pretty much to his number 2 man, although Google's at great pains to say he's not a candidate for CEO. Pichai, who originally started with Chrome, I met him when he was pushing Chrome OS. We had a great debate over the future of Chrome OS. And Sundar, I'm sorry, I was wrong. I thought there's no future. It's a browser. It's not an operating system. Little did I know. Now he has research, search, maps, Google+, commerce, ad products, infrastructure, Android, Chrome, and Google Apps. Is there anything left? There's YouTube. That's Susan Wojcicki. Apparently, Nest will stay with Larry Page, but basically, Page, I think, is saying, "You run this business. I have some other things I want to take care of." He says he's taking care of the bigger picture. Nothing to say about that. Moving on.
Oh no! Wait a minute.
Okay.
I want Ben to talk about his theory that Google has peaked.
You are a Ben fan, Philip.
I am, and this was probably the most provocative thing written last week.
Google, yeah, I loved the article, actually. And I think it hurt you to write it even, because you're, as you admit in the article, a Google fan, Ben.
I wouldn't say I'm hurt per se. I think if I'm hurt by anything, it's that to write anything like this is risky, because anyone who accuses anyone like me or Philip or anyone who puts opinion pieces out there of looking for clicks couldn't be farther from the truth. Like, there's way more risk in being wrong or something like that to your reputation.
No, take it from me and Dvorak. Being wrong has never hurt either of us.
Well, I mean, we're
depends what your reputation you're looking for. Of course,
I'm just going to leave that one. I'm not going to touch it. But basically, my contention is not that they, as a company, are in any trouble. I think that they own search deservedly. They will continue to own it for a very long time. I'm actually relatively skeptical of people that think that their search business.
But owning search means a lot less than it did a few years ago.
Well, it's like Microsoft still owns operating systems.
Right. So what? IBM still owns mainframes. So
exactly.
Right.
That's the exact point. And the issue is that relative to mobile, relative to connected devices, they own a lot less. Whereas their absolute numbers are still fine. They're still a very profitable company. And I think that this is connected to the HBO thing, actually. I do agree with you, Leo, that there is change coming. The tipping point is actually probably going to come more from the advertising side, where there's all these new formats we're figuring out. So things like Facebook, the new Facebook, the display ad in your feed, especially on mobile, it's a very compelling ad unit. There's the Pinterest promoted pins, and Pinterest, I think, is a massive giant that just only hasn't even scratched the surface of its potential. There's advertorial type native advertising. There's all these sorts of new advertising formats that are way more compelling than old display ads ever were. And as these are kind of figured out and become more effective and have all the benefits of digital advertising, like the tracking and the targeting and things like that, you're going to see more and more money move from television. Because if you take the advertising industry as a whole, the search advertising is $50 billion. That's a lot of money. Advertising as a whole is $500 billion. So search is only a fraction of that, which means by definition, if a lot of that $500 billion moves online, and Google still only ever has search, it's not that their business goes away, it's that it just becomes less important, just like Microsoft's PC business never went away. And so when I said peak Google, it wasn't that the business is going to decline, it's that their relative importance in the arena that they compete in, which is advertising, will decline.
I don't disagree with you, but didn't we say the same thing about Facebook? If they can't figure out mobile advertising, it's over, and they kind of figured it out.
It's not a mobile thing, though, I think. I think the challenge for Google is there's a very, very large exception here, which is YouTube. Setting aside YouTube, the rest of Google, Google is really all about the algorithm and that's not just about the search results, but also about the way they serve ads, the auction system. It's all highly automated. It's very targeted, and it's a great system because people go to Google. They already want to buy, and Google presents the opportunity to buy right in front of them. It's a fantastic business. However, the reason why there's so much more advertising at the high end of the funnel, to use the term, is because a lot of advertising is making people aware that they have a problem, aware that there's a product that fits their needs, or maybe just making them feel, especially when it comes to things like toothpaste. When Philip went to Walgreens to buy his toothpaste, people generally don't research toothpaste. They don't do comparisons. They don't do checklists. They go there and they grab a toothpaste. They don't really think much about it. But that choice has actually been heavily influenced by advertising. And it's something you buy toothpaste every month, every year for your entire life. And so there's a lot of value to these companies to create affinity for a particular brand of toothpaste. And this is the sort of advertising that Google and Google's properties are not as good at. Again, YouTube is a big exception here, and I probably didn't spend enough time on YouTube because it's a fantastic.
You point out in the article, or in an addendum to the article, it's probably the best acquisition, one of the best acquisitions ever.
No, for sure, because it really is Google's major foothold in the future in a very real way. Again,
well, that's what I wonder is how nimble Google can be, and I would guess that this Sundar Pichai move is probably exactly related to what you're talking about. It's almost Sundar, put your finger there and hold this. Put your finger in this dike and let me, Larry Page, start to figure out what we're going to do next.
There's also an aspect. I mean, Larry Page just had a ton on his plate. I mean, he had like 10 or 12 executives reporting to him, which is a tremendous amount of.
Well, he said that. He said, all I'm doing is reading reports all day. I can't do it anymore.
Right. No, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, I would hesitate to read too much into this beyond the fact that Sundar Pichai is awesome.
Well, and is getting very powerful.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean,
rightly
yes,
so.
They clarified that he's not going to be CEO tomorrow, but right. I mean, I would strongly suspect he's, if something were to happen to Larry Page, he'd be CEO.
Yeah.
Isn't there a longer term issue that Google's got to at some point deal with, that their main source of revenue is advertising, and it's mostly coming from the U.S. and Europe. That's what's funding Google. Yet Google is supplying the internet to the whole world, and the growth of the internet in the whole world is not in the U.S. and Europe. That's saturated. It's in developing countries, China, India, Brazil, where that isn't spending money on the kinds of stuff that Google advertises.
Well, and Google doesn't even have a foothold in some of these countries.
Right. But isn't there a disconnect between what's paying for the revenue, what's paying for the internet, and where the internet is growing? And isn't that a problem for Google in the long run?
Well, I think there's a fundamental challenge with all businesses, which is, one is just maintain the current business, and two is growing. And I think what you're articulating is a challenge to Google's growth going forward. I know Horace Deju of Simco has put forward a very provocative theory that, it's a known fact that Google's revenue growth correlates to the growth of internet penetration, and that's set to peak in 2015, I think. And he wonders if Google's growth is also set to peak for the same reason. I don't know. It's very possible. I guess yes, that plays it. It's the same thing again. To go back to something like Microsoft, the issue is not that they were shrinking. It's that the growth possibilities were seen to have become much more limited, and that's what kind of limited the stock price in a lot of ways. So I think it's a reasonable thing to ask about Google. That said, I mean, search is not going anywhere. It I think will remain for a very long time the best means of direct response advertising, which is advertising that's meant to elicit a purchase immediately.
So it's brand advertising that you think they're going to lose, and that's where the biggest money is spent, of course.
Exactly, and that's where I think they're going to have less of a foothold than people will think. Again, the analogy being like Microsoft with mobile. And I think to extend the analogy, it's just because the skills and what's needed to win in that category is actually a lot different than what's necessary to win in direct response advertising. And I just think Google's not in as strong a place either from a product perspective like, Google Plus, not Facebook. But also I think just more from a kind of a cultural approach perspective. And again, it doesn't make it a bad business. It makes it an amazing business that I'm not by any means trying to sell short. But does not necessarily mean they'll be as dominant in online advertising in 5 years or 10 years as they are today.
That's kind of the way of the world in technology. This stuff moves a lot faster. Horace has written a lot about the trajectory of successful companies, and it's changed in the tech business. The cycle's very short now. It's hard to stay on top.
The cycle's short. Google were the ones that brought DR, direct response, to the web, right? Prior to that, branding was what it was. And really, the web is best for branding, right? Podcasts are even better.
Yes, let's all say that, since we all have podcasts. Podcasts are even better.
Though. Podcasts are even better than the web.
It's no accident that Horace,
branding.
that Ben have entered this market that you and I, Dave, have for so long embraced.
Totally. There's no better way that I've found. And we've been in the advertising business for 15 years, 16 years now, right? Yeah. But direct response works on the web. The problem with the web is you can track the click, right? Billboards still work, but nobody tracks the number of cars that crash into them as a success metric, right? One is one too many. It's true.
But that's why it's hard to sell. I mean, I don't know about you, but I have a hard time selling brand advertising because it's hard to measure the impact.
And we get to thank Google for that, because Google was really smart. When they came out with the whole AdSense and AdWords thing, they didn't sell people on the results of the ad. They sold people on wanting a report that looked good, right? Which is how people are. And so Google built reports that showed you everything, but focused on the one number that Google charged you for, the click. Right. And this was brilliant, and it sucked for us, right? Because we were previously in the business of brand advertising, and it worked. Yeah. People saw lift, all this stuff was there. And then Google came in and said, hey, we can bring DR to the web. It's like, no, it's better elsewhere, because people, the whole click and then buy thing, tracking the success of an ad by the number of people that click on it is so counterintuitive to the way advertising and branding and human minds work. And yet it's what the entire business wants to look at. And people are wrong to look at this, but it's total human nature to say, oh, there's a number I can finally look at. We've been advertising for hundreds of years, and suddenly now we decide that, oh, the most important thing is tracking the number of people that touched on my ad. No.
From your mouth to somebody's ear.
Well, I think what you see, though, is a lot of the companies that have advertised on the web traditionally haven't the real money in branding advertising is in companies like P&G, Tide.
Right.
And they're buying football.
It's a long play.
They want big eyeballs.
They're still mostly all on TV because, it's a long play. It's a great way to put it in every respect of the word. And it's also interesting to talk about Facebook and kind of their Atlas sort of thing. We talked about all the data from your credit card transactions. Like Apple's or Facebook is their offer is to connect like online advertising all the way to those transactions. And so because it is attractive. Dave's exactly right. The idea of being able to understand where your money is spent. It's, the whole, what's the adage? My co-host mentioned this on Next Month this week, but is a marketer tells you, I know 50% of my money is very effective. I just don't know which 50%. Right. And
that's the phrase we've been using in advertising for decades, right?
No, exactly. The problem
this is a whole
any marketer will tell you, like, the reason they know it works is because when they stop spending, their sales go down.
Right.
And that's still the biggest indicator of the success of advertising.
Yeah. This is a whole show I'd love to do with you guys, a whole show on this subject. Certainly something of great interest to us. But we do have to take a break for a fine advertisement from one of our fine sponsors. Winwood Ford was an advertiser. Now, there's a brand. That's a brand campaign for Ford. And they spent a couple of $1 million, I think, over the 2 or 3 years they were with us. They had no way to measure. I mean, you can't measure the sales of cars based on podcast ads. But they were very happy because they did research, and there's ways to find out if people are seeing it.
Well, I mean, what's compelling about podcast advertising, why it's been so successful, is it's a native ad, and it's a great. And what I mean by that is it's in the same format as the content around it. Exactly. And so I use the word native ad in my article, and I almost regret it because people immediately think
it has a different meaning.
Paid for articles. But what I mean is, like, I think podcast ads are a great native ad. And
you mean native to the medium? You mean native to the medium? Yeah.
And so people are working out or they're driving their car, and some people click through it, but a lot of people just like are content to listen to it, and that's enough, and that gets the job done.
Right. Love to have Ford back. Just saying. You know what they told us? They said, yeah, that was great. It was a good experiment. We loved buying podcasts. They didn't just buy us. They bought many podcasts. But that's it. We're done. It's such a blip when you're spending, $60 million on television ads every week. A million here, million there. You don't even notice. Chicken feed, dimes.
Yeah, there's just an efficiency problem.
Yeah, that's the problem. We should all combine into a giant. Anytime you guys want to bring your shows here, and Philip, you should do a show too. We'll just combine it into a giant blob. Go back to Dearborn. Our show today brought
the roll-up contact.
Well, that's what happened. It's happened before, but the problem is the reason that you do a podcast and I do a podcast and Ben does a podcast and Horace does a podcast is because we're all bloody-minded individualists, and would make enough money each of us so we don't have to worry about it. And nobody's really trying to take over the world, except Jason Calacanis. He's trying to take over the world. Our show brought to you by Stamps.com. If you're going to the post office, you're wasting your time because you can now buy and print official U.S. postage on demand from your computer and your printer anytime, day or night, that you need it. And if you're in the business of sending out stuff, fulfillment, if you're sending out brochures, bills, if you're an eBay or Etsy seller, and you're not using Stamps.com, you're crazy. You're missing out on the efficiency of this system. Stamps.com gives you everything you need. You get the software, you'll get a digital scale so you'll never overpay or underpay postage. They will fill out forms as you work. For instance, they take it right from the Etsy website or the eBay website, fill out the forms, even international forms. You get discounts you can't get at the post office, discounted package insurance in just one click, print out certified mail, return receipt, international customs forms automatically. You never again will write out the recipient's address. It takes it right from the address book or the website. You won't write your address. It prints right on envelopes with your company's logo. It makes you look professional. And that's really the value of Stamps.com. Sure, it's going to save you time and money, but it makes you look like you really know what you're doing. I want you to try it right now. We've got a no-risk offer that's so fantastic. If you go, in fact, probably when you went there, you didn't believe it. Go to Stamps.com. There's a microphone at the top there. Click the microphone, enter the offer code TWIT. Oh, I like that. Look at that. They've got a new landing page. And say go. And we got a $110 value here for you. The digital scale is free. You pay $5 shipping and handling. It's the only reason I can't say it's free is because you have to pay the shipping and handling. But they more than make up for that with $55 in postage coupons you can use over the life of your account. That's awesome. They make up for it with a $5 activity kit and, of course, a month free of Stamps.com. So this is a really great trial offer. It's one of the best we offer, and I want you to try it right now. Stamps.com. Click the microphone. Look at this. If you just go to the front page, it says, give us a try, get $5 in free postage. No, click the microphone, enter TWIT, $55. $50 more in free postage just for clicking the microphone. I think that's fair. It's a good deal. You know what? We had a great week. This is some of the stuff you missed if you missed anything on TWIT this week.
Previously on TWIT.
My illusion.
I'm mixing my shows.
Mac Break Weekly.
We have a video. We sent Jeff Needle to Whole Foods to buy chicken fingers. Sees it, pops up your credit card, receipt comes out, and you're done. Approved.
Apple Magic.
Apple Magic.
i5 for the iPhone.
Well, a new feature in iOS 8.1 lets you get text messages on your Mac or other iOS device that isn't your iPhone. So basically, it makes SMS act like iMessage.
Windows Weekly.
Satya Nadella was given that $13.5 million just to stick around, just in case he became CEO.
We don't really care if he leaves, do we? Oh, a little bit.
Right.
Give him a couple million. See what happens.
Tony, could you go grab some coffee while the big boys talk?
Tech News Tonight.
28-year-old man has been sentenced to 2 years in prison in Japan, the first person in the world known to have received a jail sentence for making 3D printed firearms.
Twit. Some assembly required.
Felix Baumgartner's record has been broken, ladies and gentlemen. The Red Bull Stratosphere skydiver has been bested by an amateur. He's actually a vice president at Google, Alan Eustace, senior vice president, very well-known guy in the computer industry. For 3 years, in secret, in private, he has been planning this parachute to break the world record for high-altitude jumps. Google offered to help subsidize it. He said, no, it'll become too commercial. I got the video. Well, let me show you the video. This is so awesome. He's jumping from a balloon. Worked with a company called Paragon Space Development Company, Corporation. They made his spacesuit. There he goes. They just pull the trigger, and he's floating. Bye-bye. 25 miles high on a giant helium-filled balloon. You gotta be nuts. He's 57.
Looks like a future Darwin Award winner.
What could possibly go wrong? There he is in his spacesuit. He didn't have Red Bull. All he had was a couple of GoPros. Pulled the trigger, fell for 15 minutes, broke the sound barrier. You could hear a sonic boom on the ground. He didn't hear it, of course, because he was faster than the speed of sound for a while. Then floats.
People on the ground could apparently hear the sonic boom.
They could hear him as he's coming in through the atmosphere, and then he lands, goes flop, and he's broken the world record. And he did it for fun and for science and not for Red Bull, and I like that. Total fall was 135,890 feet, and that's pretty good. It apparently gets hot when you get up into the stratosphere. It starts to heat up from the sun, so he didn't want to move. So instead of moving to flick his radio switch, when the ground talked to him on the radio, he would just shift his legs slightly to say yes or no.
You know, you think of it as being cold up there. I was very surprised that it was hot.
Yeah. But it gets cold as you get higher. Obviously, you get beyond the stratosphere into space. It's pretty chilly up there.
Minus 271.
I think isn't it like the side that's on the sun? It's super hot.
Right, the sun heats you up.
Super cold.
Right.
It's like.
Well, actually, that's right. That's a problem in spacecraft. They have to cool it and heat it. Anyway, he did this all in secret. Didn't do it for. I love that. Anybody here have the new Google Inbox app? By the way, I want to point out that you should ask for an invitation. Google is trying to reinvent email, and you know what? It's awesome. Awesome sauce.
How do you get an invitation?
Go to inbox.google.com and request one. Some of the people in our chat room have said they've got one within a few days of asking for it. If you get one, you get, I think, 3 invitations. Don't ask me. I've already given mine to Mike Elgin and Sarah Lane. What it does is it really lets you, it's fast email triage. They're basing it, others have done something similar. Mailbox was the first to do this kind of swiping to handle a message. And Outlook, we have to give credit to Outlook.com. Microsoft invented the idea of sweeping your inbox. But altogether, I am really impressed with this. And I have a horrible inbox. One of the worst. So you can look. So these are bundles. They're folders. Anything I want to see here? No, I'll sweep it. Goodbye. If I say, oh, I want to respond to this later, I can open it and I can either pin it. Let's sweep it over and say, I'll deal with this tomorrow. Deal with this tomorrow. Deal with this tomorrow. And then sweep away the stuff I don't want. It's really fabulous. Really fabulous.
Mobile only?
No, it is mobile and web. So if you go to inbox.google.com, once you've set it up with your Google Gmail account, it will work on the web, Android and iOS. But here's what's interesting. It's just another interface to Gmail. So everything you do on Inbox modifies your Gmail account. I am very impressed. This is a...
only works with personal Gmail accounts.
Not
Does
apps.
not work if you have your own domain.
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope. And that pisses Jeff Jarvis off no end. Yep. But I am really impressed, and this is a challenging problem. I imagine for all of you, and certainly for me. Just a little word of encouragement. Thank you. Keep it up.
Yeah. No, it's fascinating to see. I mean,
it's not going to save Google. Don't get me wrong, Ben.
Well, no,
Google's still peaked.
Yeah, now I'm in trouble.
You're in deep doo-doo, my friend.
No, it is a much more compelling sort of experience, an immersive sort of experience.
Yes.
I don't know. It'd be interesting to see what would work from an ad perspective in it or not. I mean, certainly, there are ads in Gmail, famously so.
I haven't seen any ads in this yet.
Right. Well, of course not. Not when they launch a new product.
Oh, yeah.
But one can imagine it being much more effective delivery for ads than a traditional Gmail interface would be. I mean, they've tested, I think, having basically emails, or you have them, I think, now in your regular Gmail interface, where like the top thing is like an ad. It's in there, but A, it's kind of clearly an ad, and B, were it not clearly an ad, it'd be indistinguishable from spam.
Right.
I mean, just advertising in email is a tough.
They have, and they do this in the categories on Gmail too, this promotional, they automatically filter promotional stuff in there, and they've been putting ads in there, by the way, knowing that people look at it, and they still have that. I think that that's not a bad idea. Just acknowledge, hey, there's going to be ads in here. I sweep them. Goodbye. But I guess at some point. Ello.co, the Facebook killer that is going to kill Facebook by being private, has taken another big chunk of venture capital, $5.5 million. They know, of course, that makes people worry because anybody who invests in a website like Ello.co expects an exit at some point. So they signed a legally binding charter, shackled themselves to their manifesto that they would never sell ads or data. Actually,
how do they enforce that if someone else?
Do they sue themselves?
Running the company?
I think they sue themselves.
If they sell the company and there's new management, well, how's the new management bound by that?
No, that's probably right. They're not. Maybe though. I don't know. I'd have to read the manifesto.
I think they are. I think the way it works is they are bound by it, even under a sale. I think that's part of it. I mean, the bigger issue is that it's not clear who's going to want to buy them because they're not going to be successful.
Right. So there.
I mean, the problem is to start a social network is already unbelievably difficult. I mean, there's a reason why they're so valuable is because they're very,
they got some attention
products, but
yeah,
you have the whole network effect. You have to get people on, and the problem is because their number one priority is not creating a social network, it's avoiding ads, and that's a small distinction, but it matters. And the reason it matters is because how are they going to monetize? They're going to monetize by selling premium features.
That's what they said.
Definition, Well, by definition, like for example, there's a conversation on Twitter like, is your data portable? Well, you can pay for it. Well, okay. The problem is that by definition, they are not offering the best possible product that they can because they need to keep something back to sell.
Right.
And which makes it even harder to get new users because it's not like it's already so hard to get users and you're putting yourself behind the 8 ball by actually holding back features. There's a reason why all social networks are ad supported. It's because they need to be super awesome from a product perspective for anyone to even use it, and they need to be free. Like there needs to be zero barrier to entry for users to get on it. And yes, in the long run, you can argue that ads detract from the user experience, but the reality is Facebook is very highly motivated to make it compelling to use because they know they're adding ads to it and making it more annoying in some ways. Needless to say, I'm skeptical.
The FCC is going to delay the auction of the 700 megahertz bandwidth they got back from analog television stations at least to next year. Phone companies not happy about that. Pew survey says 40% of internet users have experienced online harassment, 18% in severe form, 72% have seen it happen. What a surprise. Age and gender are most closely associated with the experience of online harassment among young adults, 65% have been the target of harassment. 65%. And young women, of course, 26% have been stalked online. 25% were the target of online sexual harassment.
It's a dangerous place.
Screw the internet. I'm going to Ello.co.
Well, I mean, that's a good example. I mean, Ello launched without any sort of kind of like blocking or any sort of.
They still don't have it. That's a premium feature.
No, I think they did add it. I mean, it is kind of like it's you need to have it. I mean, this is I'm jumping in here because I hate to make light. It's easy to. What's happening on the internet is really lately, and I think in our little corner of the world is really kind of appalling. And it's one thing to talk about, to be an absolutist about, free speech and the importance of that when you're in an analog environment, but when you're have a thing like Twitter where people can generate just untold number of anonymous accounts, and no one knows who you are and it's anonymous. I mean, there's some very real issues, I think, that are being raised now, and I think requires a lot of thoughtfulness. And we
spent a lot of time talking about it on This Week in
everything
Google.
easy.
It
makes everything easy.
It worries me because the internet is probably the most important invention, certainly of our era, probably of many eras, and yet it is a tool that is being wielded against people too, and that's terrible. I want to thank you guys.
We're in the early stages of it.
I know, and we got to solve this though, right, Dave? We got to solve this.
I totally agree. But first cars came out, we didn't really have roads. And then we had to figure out.
People kept driving into
rules.
billboards, right?
That's
a problem.
Ads were successful back then.
I want to thank you, Dave Hamilton from Mac Observer and the Mac Geek Gab podcast.
Nice.
I said it slowly.
Yeah, that's right. Start slow. That's it. Baby steps.
That's it. Baby steps. I'll work up to full speed later. It's great to have you, Dave.
Right.
Thanks for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Ben, you're brilliant, as always. Love having you. Stratechery.com, and don't forget Exponent.fm. He got up early to be with us, but his brain worked even then. Mine would not be working at that hour of the morning, so I thank you. Really appreciate it, Ben. And a hearty thanks to a first-timer on the show, Philip Elmer-DeWitt. I am a huge fan, and I'm so glad you could be here. I hope you will come back. That 2 hours went by like that, right?
Yeah, except it's practically my bedtime now.
Go have dinner. Go have something to eat. You've earned yourself a beer. Thank you all for joining us. We do Twit every Sunday afternoon, 3 p.m. Pacific. Now, we're in a weird time shift area here because in some parts of the world, we've left summertime. We haven't left it here. So today it was at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, 2000 UTC. Next week, 2100 UTC. So adjust yourself accordingly. You know what? The solution, just watch Twit all the time, and eventually the show will be on. If you can't do that, though, you can download on demand and watch it whenever you want. That's at twit.tv or wherever you get your podcasts, and of course, Stitcher and Podcast and Instacast and all the different clients. And our own excellent Twit clients written by third-party developers, and we thank them for doing that. You can also see us on YouTube and, pretty much everywhere. But do watch. Subscribe if you can. You don't want to miss an episode. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for being in the studio. We had a nice studio audience today. You can email tickets@twit.tv if you'd like to join us in studio. I appreciate it. It is a long 2 hours, especially on those chairs. Right? Oh, boy, am I getting nods. Sorry about that. We got to get better chairs. All right, friends. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time. Another Twit.
This is amazing.
Bye-bye.